Hello, fellow learners. My name is Madison Armstrong. Today, through this presentation, I'll be addressing a pressing concern that resonates deeply within the Indigenous communities of Canada, the Indigenous health crisis. Rooted in decades of coerced assimilation tactics, this crisis has left lasting scars on various aspects of Indigenous well-being, spanning physical, spiritual, and mental domains of existence. These adversities have intertwined, leading to an intergenerational cycle of trauma within their communities. As we navigate this complex issue, it's important to acknowledge that research on social determinants of health often lacks an interpretation from an Indigenous lens. Let's begin by delving into the profound wisdom of the Indigenous medicine wheel. This sacred symbol embodies the teachings of First Nations communities, emphasizing interconnectedness and worldviews. A cornerstone of their culture is holistic health, viewing wellness as the harmonious balance of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects. This holistic approach to health recognizes that each dimension is intricately linked and that the well-being of one aspect has a direct impact onto the others. As we explore this framework, we'll understand that health goes beyond the individual, extending to connections within family, community, and the environment. This interconnected perspective aligns with Indigenous values, emphasizing the importance of community and nature as integral components of one's well-being. Our journey leads us to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, a psychological theory that outlines human needs from basic survival to self-fulfillment. This framework comprises 5 tiers: psychological needs, safety, belongingness, self-esteem, and self-actualization. At first glance, this hierarchy seems universal and applicable to all individuals, right? However, when applied to Indigenous communities, historical challenges such as poverty, cultural disconnection, and limited healthcare access impede the fulfillment of these needs. It's crucial to navigate this framework with cultural sensitivity, keeping in mind the complexities and respecting Indigenous knowledge. By doing so, we can unravel how these challenges intersect and affect various aspects of Indigenous well-being. Delving even deeper, we uncover the origins of Maslow's hierarchy within the observational studies of the Blackfoot Nation in Alberta. This revelation underscores the value of Indigenous knowledge and its inherent wisdom. The philosophy invites us to reflect on the value of relationship, kinship, and gratitude, shaping the cultural fabric of Indigenous societies. It challenges the Western notion of self-actualization as a destination achieved through individual effort, and instead, it presents a continuous journey toward realizing one's inherent potential, with a focus on collective well-being. This contrast between Western and Indigenous perspectives not only enriches our understanding, but also highlights the significance of cultural context when addressing health disparities, especially when referencing historical models such as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I will now take time to outline my 4 focal areas as well as offer some solutions. Area number 1 is, of course, physical access to vital resources. Shifting our focus to another critical determinant of health, access to healthcare, we discover inequalities in its distribution. Remote Indigenous communities often grapple with limited access to healthcare services, leading to lower care rates and poorer health outcomes. The geographic isolation faced by these communities creates barriers that extend beyond mere distance. Even when facilities are present, they're often understaffed and underfunded. These systemic issues extend to urban Indigenous populations as well, exposing them to environmental toxins and poverty-related health risks. This disparity in healthcare access sheds light on the systemic nature of the Indigenous health crisis. Beyond physical access in a geographical sense, Indigenous individuals encounter social barriers within the healthcare system. These barriers are often subtle or, perhaps not even subtle at all, but have significant and lasting impacts. Implicit biases, for example, can affect the quality of care received, shaping the overall healthcare experience. Indigenous perspectives on health underscore the balance between mind, body, spirit, and emotions, along with the interconnectedness of humans and nature. Embracing cultural practices alongside biomedical models is pivotal for a holistic approach to health. Integrating Indigenous ways of knowing into healthcare practices fosters a more inclusive and culturally sensitive environment. There is a movement towards a model of healthcare called value-based healthcare, which is centered around implementing preventative medicine, relying on collaboration with other members of the community that creates a space where benefit and risk are shared at a community level. This model of healthcare closely reflects the Indigenous perspectives of holistic health, as well as the appreciation of the intricacy and certainty of interconnectedness within our nature. Education, a determinant of health, shapes opportunities and life trajectories. However, underfunded schools, language barriers, and culturally insensitive curricula hinder Indigenous children from realizing their potentials. Beyond academic knowledge, education is a pathway to life skills and resilience. A broader educational approach acknowledges the rich cultural heritage of Indigenous communities and empowers them to navigate the challenges they face. Cultural sensitivity training in education and other sectors is imperative to foster understanding and collaboration, paving the way for more equitable outcomes and reaching reconciliation. Historic healthcare abuses suffered by Indigenous peoples by the hands of Western medical systems have engendered mistrust and continued abuses among Indigenous communities. Overcoming these traumas requires bridging Western and Indigenous knowledge systems within our social services. Traditional healing practices aligned with Indigenous culture hold the promise of repairing these relationships and are required for reconciliation. Individuals need supports within their communities to express and discover their identities, and these skills originate in education systems and transpire outwards. For example, a culturally informed team and/or Indigenous advocate on a city council might hold the deciding vote for organizing a cultural event or a community-wide service in the betterment of the Indigenous communities. It starts with education and continues through dialogue, collaboration, and empathy. However, recognizing the fundamental differences between Western scientific and Indigenous knowledge systems is essential for successful collaboration and co-creation of healthcare solutions. This can be achieved by increasing representation of Indigenous peoples and perspectives in our government pipelines as well as in academic literature. To First Nations, self-actualization is not a destination. Rather, it's a revelation of the inherently sacred essence infused within a divine spark. Through education, prayer, rituals, ceremonies, personal experiences, and vision quests, the expression of the sacred self is welcomed into the world. In his model, Maslow does not include space for the importance of community actualization, where the basic needs for survival and safety are the responsibility of the community rather than the individual. Rather, the Blackfoot tribes that Maslow observed do not have a word for poverty, as we would define it today, and rather translated it to be without a family. This on its own pays tribute to the importance of relationship, kinship, and gratitude, which greatly contrasts the Europeans' need for individualization and capitalistic hierarchies and greed. Therefore, we must take into consideration the importance of culture, community, and collaboration in the revitalization of Indigenous culture and identity, and how these are pillars of closing the gaps which are causing the Indigenous health crisis in Canada. Implementing increased culturally sensitive training for healthcare professionals and government employees, funding for Indigenous education, including support for schools and Indigenous communities, and culturally relevant curriculum development, is of course somewhat costly. Funding is a mixture of federal and provincial, but mostly provincial, and costs for these solutions could range from tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars, encompassing program development, training, delivery, and ongoing supports. Expanding the accessibility of healthcare to Indigenous communities, such as building culturally sensitive healthcare, such as sweat lodges or healing centers, is typically funded by the provincial government and would again cost tens or hundreds of millions of dollars if done adequately to support long-term response and care. Thirdly, inspired by the story of the Indigenous community in Bella Bella, I would like to offer the solution of awarding the desire of self-governments back to our Indigenous communities and offer them the freedom to manage programs such as community revitalization, such as imprisonment options. I believe this would be federally controlled and would cost in the ballpark of tens of millions. And of course, free of charge, we need to keep up with our dialogue and continued vocalization of Indigenous perspectives, which is supported by increased Indigenous representation in all levels of government and academics. In conclusion, the Indigenous health crisis is a multifaceted challenge that demands a comprehensive response. By aligning our strategies with Indigenous teachings like the medicine wheel and critically evaluating frameworks such as Maslow's hierarchy, we can work towards addressing this crisis holistically. Equitable healthcare access, dismantling social barriers, improving education, and respecting Indigenous culture are integral steps on this journey. As we move forward, let us remember that true reconciliation requires tangible actions that honor the wisdom and resilience of our Indigenous communities. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Have a good day.